The buy button can lie. We click, we refresh, and the number blinks first. JM Bullion says the checkout price is held for 10 minutes. Then you may have to accept an updated price. Here's the translation. The quote has an expiration date, not your patience. In 2025, the switch is quieter because the screen still looks in stock while the quote timer is already running out. Stay with the timer, not the headline. What makes this nasty is how the upstream market never sleeps, even when we do. CME lists silver futures trading on CME Globex from Sunday through Friday, 6 o'clock p.m. to 5 p.m. with a 60-minute break each day. Which means you pay first. The hedge can move for almost a full day while your cart still pretends everything is calm. So we keep the map brutally simple, the only map that keeps people alive in this aisle. We look at three things in order. Is the item in stock? Do the terms change? And what is the all-in price? If we lose the order, we lose the story. Now we stare at the dealer, because the dealer is where the customer thinks the market lives. CME's standard silver futures contract is 5,000 troy ounces, and the minimum tick size is $0.005 per ounce, which makes one tick worth $25 per contract. It looks like a tiny wiggle on a chart, but inside a dealer's risk book, it is a fast, loud lever. A dealer is not pricing one coin, they are managing exposure measured in thousands of ounces at a time. That is why the first reaction is not a new headline number, it is a new rule. Reprice, requote, or go no quote. The switch clicks without a sound. We can see that rule leak through the user interface if we stop treating the screen like a promise. Bullion, COMEX says that during checkout, the price is held for 10 minutes until it refreshes, and you can see a countdown timer showing how much time is left. Mini scene, you are ready to hit place order. The timer bleeds down, you refresh once, and the same item is still there but the all-in price is not. That countdown is not there to help you, it is there to protect the dealer from you. We are trained to blame ourselves for being slow, when the system is designed to be faster than our fingers. The timer is the tell. Then comes the most seductive word in this business. Locked. APMEX says your price is locked for 5 business days. In practical terms, locked does not mean forever, it means locked inside a set of conditions you did not negotiate. That sentence sounds comforting because we want to believe the market will honor our intent. But the lock is the dealer's tool, not the buyer's shield. A lock can be a trapdoor. Watch how the lock changes shape depending on how we pay, because that is the first place risk gets priced in. APMEX says it provides a 4.0% discount if customers pay by check, e-check, or bank wire, and that the prices shown include that 4.0% discount. That is where the trap closes. If you pay with a more reversible method, the system claws back the discount through a higher effective all-in price. This is not morality, it is plumbing and chargeback math dressed up as choice. We are not picking a button, we are selecting who carries the risk between now and settlement. And risk always sends an invoice. Even the lock can be conditional on speed, and the condition is the quiet part. COMEX says payment must be received within 3 business days or 5 business days for paper checks to guarantee your price. It looks like you bought something, but it is really a race against a deadline that can cancel your certainty. The buyer thinks the order is the moment of commitment, while the dealer treats payment receipt as the moment of commitment. So the quote can feel solid and still evaporate when the clock wins. That is not a glitch, that is policy. Crypto is where the countdown becomes obvious because the timer stops pretending to be polite. COMEX says that when paying with Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash through its embedded BitPay invoice, you have 15 minutes to submit your payment. Mini scene. You open your wallet, the network is busy, the invoice window shrinks, and the dealer's screen is already prepared to requote the second you miss it. We call it convenience, but the clock is doing the negotiating. This is the same switch in a different costume. Quote TTL, then requote, then no quote if the book is stressed. The pressure is engineered. Now we move to a dealer that says the quiet part loud because it helps us name the mechanism. SD Bullion's payment and pricing page dated April 30th, 2025 says that confirming to lock in the price enters a binding agreement which cannot be cancelled without penalty. In human terms, lock-in is not a courtesy, it is a contract that punishes hesitation. This is where the survival warning belongs. Once you press the lock, the dealer can treat your delay as a loss they are allowed to collect. We are not just shopping anymore, we are stepping into a risk transfer. The switch is legal language. And they tell us exactly how they calculate the pain, which is why we should never pretend this is casual. SD Bullion's terms of use dated August 13, 2025, says cancellation fees are 5% of the order total or $35, whichever is greater plus any applicable market loss, with market loss defined as the difference between the locked spot price at the time of the order and the spot price at the time of cancellation, and the balance due within 10 business days. Which means you pay first. The moment you lock, the dealer has a formula to bill you for movement you did not cause. So the kill switch is not only a button, it is a ledger entry waiting to be activated. This is why dealers love lock language. It turns volatility into enforceable fees. The house keeps its edge. Here is where people argue back, and we should let that argument breathe before we crush it with how the system actually runs. LBMA says the LBMA silver price is set once daily at 12 o'clock in US dollars per troy ounce, and it is administered independently by ICE Benchmark Administration. It looks like spot is one live, universal number, but the most recognized benchmark in the physical ecosystem is literally set once per day. So when a dealer's quote moves ahead of what your spot widget shows, it is not proof of conspiracy by itself. It can be proof that the dealer is keying off a different feed, a different hedge, a different risk rule than the spot you are staring at. Different clocks, different truths. Finally, we zoom out to the mint refiner and the wholesaler because that is where the physical constraints force the dealer to act like a machine. LBMA's London Good Delivery Guidance says silver bars have a minimum content of 750 troy ounces and a maximum silver content of 1100 troy ounces. Mini-scene, upstream, inventory is counted in heavy bars with serial numbers and weights. And downstream, we are arguing over a 1-ounce line item that can flip from in stock to call for pricing without warning. The wholesaler lives between those worlds, and when liquidity tightens, the dealer's safest move is to shorten quote TTL and push more buyers into no quote. If you only remember one thing, physical supply moves slow, but pricing risk moves instantly. So here's the thesis we carry through this series, and we do not let it get drowned in chart noise. The number is not real unless it can be honored, paid, and shipped under the terms that survive the next refresh. We are going to keep the same cast-in frame every time, the dealer facing us, the wholesaler behind them, the mint refiner upstream, and the buyer absorbing the timing risk. And I will point to the exact place where the quiet switch sits inside the dealer as risk rules. For now, notice what the screen teaches you to ignore: the timer, the terms, and the moment the quote asks you to approve the new price. That approval is the handshake you did not realize you were giving. Last time we saw the timer and the terms. Now we follow the switch into the dealer risk book where quotes are allowed to die. APMEX says the option to cancel an order may take up to 1 hour after placing the order to appear in the account. Translation in plain English. There is a window where the trade exists, but your undo button does not. We start here because this is the first mechanical hint that the system treats an order like a position, not a wish. If the dealer hedges the moment we submit, then the dealer needs protection from us changing our mind after the market moves. So the site delays our escape, then charges for it later. That is the rhythm of the switch. Baymard published cart statistics on September 22, 2025, and puts the average documented online shopping cart abandonment rate at 70.22%. That is where the trap tightens. Most people quit before paying, and the system is built to punish the ones who do not. We are not using that number to shame anyone. We are using it to explain why dealers engineer friction and urgency at the same time. A requote prompt is not just pricing, it is a filter that shakes out slow money. When the market gets sharp, the dealer wants fewer half-committed carts. So the checkout becomes a gate, not a service. Ottawa Bullion Wholesale says prices update constantly in the cart, and the only time prices are held static is after proceeding to checkout, where you have 10 minutes before prices auto-refresh based on the latest pricing. It looks like a stable price, but it is a temporary ceasefire that ends automatically. We should read that as risk management, not generosity. The dealer cannot leave a firm number hanging while the hedge moves underneath it. So the site gives us a short corridor, then forces a new decision. The corridor is the kill switch dressed as convenience. Bullion. Com says that during checkout, the price is held for 10 minutes, you see a countdown timer, and once the order is confirmed, the price is locked in. Mini scene. We see the item in stock, we reach for payment, and the countdown bleeds out while the all-in price waits to snap. This is not a mystery feature, it is the dealer throttling exposure 1 minute at a time. When the timer exists, it means the dealer expects the world to move before we finish typing. So the quote can change before our spot widget updates. The timer tells us who the site is protecting. APMEX says payment must be dated within 24 hours of the order date and received within 5 business days to guarantee the locked-in price. In human terms, the dealer is not locking a number for us, the dealer is renting it to us until funds arrive. That rule matters because it turns the buyer into the weak link in the hedge chain. If we are late, the dealer is stuck with market exposure and will bill us for it or cancel us if it chooses. So the quote is real only inside the deadline. A number without a clock is decoration. APMEX also lists payment thresholds, including that orders over $500,000 can be paid only by bank wire, and other tiers cap which methods are allowed. Which means you pay first. The bigger the ticket, the fewer exits you get when things get ugly. This is the dealer managing settlement risk, not debating metals. We think the constraint is inventory, but the first constraint is payment finality. That is why terms change before spot changes on your screen. The dealer is watching failure modes, not headlines. APMEX says it holds all forms of check payments for 4 business days, and funds are considered good 4 business days from receipt. It looks like a slow administrative step, But it is a fraud and reversal buffer that shifts time risk onto us. We need this to understand why a dealer shortens quote TTL when volatility rises. When payment takes days to become good, a dealer cannot afford to honor a stale price for days. So the site pushes us toward faster rails with discounts and punishes slow rails with tighter rules. The switch is a calendar. APMEX wholesale terms say the sales order price is locked in for 5 business days on orders under $25,000, and for 3 business days on orders above $25,000. Mini-scene: the moment we cross a threshold, the same metal comes with a shorter fuse. This is how a dealer segments risk without ever saying the word risk. A larger order is harder to hedge cleanly and harder to unwind if we fail to pay. So the system compresses our time, not the dealer time. That compression is the quiet extraction. APMEX says cancellations are subject to its market loss policy, plus the greater of $50 or 5% of the order total fee. And any market gain on cancellations remains the property of APMEX. Here is the translation. If the market moves against the dealer, we owe money, and if it moves in our favor, we do not get paid for it. This is why quotes change before spot in the retail lane. The dealer is protecting the hedge from being used as a free option by the buyer. When volatility spikes, the dealer tightens quoting and makes the buyer reconfirm more often. A requote is the dealer refusing to sell free optionality. Bullion says a canceled order can trigger a $35 cancellation fee plus market loss. That payment is due within 5 business days after cancellation. And any market gain associated with a canceled order belongs to the dealer, not the buyer. That is where the trap shuts. Once we confirm, the downside becomes ours and the upside stays with them. We should not moralize this, we should learn from it. The dealer is telling us the order is treated like a trade. So when the site flips to no quote during fast moves, it is not drama. It is the dealer refusing to mint more trade exposure. The switch is policy, not panic. SD bullion terms dated August 13, 2025, say cancellation fees are 5% of the order total or $35, whichever is greater, plus any applicable market loss, and the balance due is to be paid within 10 business days. It looks like a simple store fee, but it is a volatility bill tied to the locked spot at order time versus spot at cancellation time. This is the core mechanism we keep circling. The dealer fears being picked off while hedging. So the system rewards fast settlement, punishes delays, and refuses to quote when it cannot hedge cleanly. That is why your screen can show inventory while the all-in price keeps sliding. Execution is the product, not the banner. SD bullion payment and pricing policy shows it was last updated April 30, 2025, and says it reserves the right to cancel any order deemed questionable, suspicious, or of significant risk regardless of payment method selected and price. Mini-scene: we still see add to cart. Then a verification hurdle appears. Then the order can vanish even after we thought it was locked. We should read this as the dealer retaining a manual override on top of the automated timers. When risk flags trip, the quote is allowed to die even if the item looks in stock. So the kill switch is both algorithmic and human, and it never announces itself loudly. BitPay support, updated June 20, 2025, says an invoice is only valid for 15 minutes to protect against volatility, and during that window the rate is locked and guaranteed. In practical terms, a timer is what you build when you cannot trust the price to stay still. We bring this in because it reveals the same design pattern across systems. A firm quote is expensive, because somebody must absorb movement while a buyer hesitates. So platforms shorten validity, then force a fresh price. Once you see this pattern, you stop blaming your refresh button. APMEX says cryptocurrency orders use an embedded BitPay invoice. You have 15 minutes to submit payment, and crypto orders exceeding $400,000 per week are not accepted. Which means you pay first. Even the fastest rail has a hard ceiling when exposure gets too large. This is not about politics or vibes, it is about settlement and liquidity under stress. If the dealer cannot be sure funds arrive inside the risk window, the dealer shuts the lane. Now connect it back to silver. When the market runs, the dealer shortens windows and caps size. That is the switch breathing. CME margin listings for COMEX 5000 silver futures show a maintenance margin of $22,000 for SI across the 12/2025 to 01/2026 period, alongside a 45.000% maintenance volatility scan. It looks like a futures detail, but it is the dealer cost of staying hedged while we shop. When maintenance is that large per contract, financing and risk limits start to matter immediately. A dealer quoting a lot of silver retail can be sitting on exposure that needs real capital to carry. So when volatility increases, the dealer does not wait for your spot widget, the dealer adjusts quotes to survive margin pressure. A reprice checkout is a margin call in civilian clothing. LBMA silver price FAQ says the LBMA silver price is set in a series of auction rounds lasting 30 seconds, and participants enter buy and sell volume in 100,000 ounces or 25,000 ounce increments. Mini-scene: upstream, price formation is happening in huge blocks on a strict clock, while downstream we argue about a 1 ounce add to cart. This matters because the retail word spot hides the fact that big price discovery runs on different timing and different size. A dealer can follow a faster, more sensitive feed than the one a consumer site displays. So the dealer can reprice before our idea of spot seems to move. The switch is the mismatch of clocks. ICE Benchmark Administration describes the auctions as running in 30-second rounds and notes an imbalance threshold, normally 500,000 US for silver. Here is the translation. The benchmark tolerates big size and still has a defined limit for mismatch, because price formation hates uncontrolled imbalance. Now we take that idea back to the retail dealer. When the dealer sees imbalance in its own flow, too many buys at once, too many carts waiting, too little firm wholesale supply, the dealer raises spread or goes no quote. That is the retail version of an imbalance threshold. It is the same instinct, scaled down. Wholesale Coins Direct describes a 1,000 troy ounce silver bar as weighing approximately 71 pounds. That is where the trap tightens. Physical silver is heavy, slow, and expensive to move, and the screen is pretending it is frictionless. We need this because it explains why inventory status can be true and still not executable at the price we saw. The bar might be in a vault, but allocation, shipping, and replacement cost are moving targets. So the dealer protects itself by repricing the all-in price while keeping inventory visible. The switch is the cost of replacing what you bought. APMEX says packages can take on average 1 to 10 business days for delivery and are shipped, registered, or insured mail and UPS. Mini scene. We lock the price today, but the physical delivery lives in a different time zone where weather, carriers, and signatures exist. This gap is where risk hides. During that gap, the dealer must stay hedged or stay inventory long, and both choices cost money. So the dealer builds rules that make our commitment fast and our cancellation expensive. Now the core warning lands. A price only exists when it can be executed, settled, and shipped without the dealer bleeding. If you are only watching the spot number, you are staring at the wrong screen. We keep the survival map the same every time. We check in stock, we read whether terms change, and we compute the all-in price we will actually pay. And I will break down the exact kill switch logic that turns a live listing into a no quote, even when spot looks calm. We saw the quiet switch in the timer and the terms. Now we watch what that switch does to real people when execution turns into a survival test. Baymer's 2025 roundup puts the average documented online cart abandonment rate at 70.22%. In practical terms, most carts die before payments, so checkout design is built to separate fast certainty from slow doubt. When the market is calm, that separation feels invisible. When silver moves, it becomes a weapon. The page can still look normal, the item can still look in stock, but the system is already sorting you by speed. That is why the quote can change before your idea of spot even feels like it moved. The clock is the bouncer. This is where the cast matters because blame gets misplaced on purpose. The buyer sees a retail screen. The dealer sees a risk limit. The wholesaler sees flow spikes. The mint or refiner sees physical constraints. So when the quote TTL tightens, it is not a mood swing. It is a circuit breaker to stop the buyer from turning the dealer into a free option. We keep our 3-point map because it forces honesty. Is it in stock? Do the terms change? What is the all-in price? If any of the three moves, the listing is not a promise. It is a negotiation. APMEX warns that it may take up to 1 hour after placing an order for the option to cancel to appear. Which means you pay first. The position can exist while your escape hatch is still locked behind a delay. That delay matters because it changes the order of events. The dealer can hedge. The wholesaler can allocate, and only then does the buyer get the illusion of choice back. In the moment you feel trapped, the system is not broken. The system is doing risk control. That is where anger belongs, not at yourself, but at the design. The consequence is not just emotional, it is structural. A delayed cancel button pushes you into customer service hours, verification steps, and policy language that you did not read because you were watching a number. The switch stays quiet because the interface stays polite. It still says add to cart, it still shows inventory. It just keeps moving the conditions under your feet. That is how extraction looks when it wears a friendly UI. SD Bullion's terms of use dated August 13, 2025. SAYS cancellation fees are 5% of the order total or $35, whichever is greater, plus any applicable market loss, paid within 10 business days. It looks like a normal store policy, but it is a volatility invoice that follows you after you leave the page. This is the real consequence of quotes changing before spot. The dealer is protecting the hedge, and the buyer is the shock absorber. Once you lock, time stops being neutral. Time becomes a billable risk. So the kill switch is not just a button that refreshes a price. It is the moment the rules flip from browsing to binding. It is when a listing turns into a contract that punishes hesitation. The wholesaler might still have bars, the dealer might still have a listing, but the terms are now shaped to prevent you from using delay as leverage. That is why no quote appears when stress rises. It is the system refusing to give you optionality for free. BitPay support says an invoice is only valid for 15 minutes to protect against volatility, and the rate is locked during that 15-minute window. Mini scene. We finally decide to pay, the network is busy, the timer bleeds out, and the next screen forces a new invoice at a new price. This is the same mechanism, just stripped of the polite language. When time expires, the quote dies, and the system calls it protection. It protects someone, just not the person refreshing the cart. Once you see that pattern, the refresh button stops feeling like a tool and starts feeling like a trap. It trains you to accept movement as normal, and it trains you to blame yourself for being slow. Meanwhile, the dealer and wholesaler are managing exposure in real time. They do not need the headline spot number to change first. They only need a risk rule to trip. That is the quiet switch you came here for. JM Bullion says prices are held for 10 minutes at checkout. And if you take longer, you have the option to approve new, updated prices before finalizing the order. Here is the translation. The system can keep the item in your cart while it forces you to reconsent to a worse all-in price. That is why the listing can stay up while execution slips away. The buyer thinks the product is the metal. The dealer is selling execution under a timer. The rest is decoration. Now we connect this to the upstream market, because this is where the quote can outrun what you call spot. Dealers hedge against futures and wholesale feeds that update continuously. When volatility spikes, those feeds become more important than the retail spot widget you are watching. So the dealer narrows TTL, widens spread, and increases the frequency of requote prompts. Sometimes it goes straight to no quote because a firm price is too expensive to honor. The switch is cost control. CME's Silver Fact card lists CME Globex hours as Sunday through Friday 6 o'clock p.m. to 5:15 p.m. ET with a 45-minute daily break. That is where the trap closes. The hedge can move almost all day while your checkout timer pretends the world is paused. When you refresh and the price changes, it is not magic. It is the hedge market moving under a retail clock that is always too slow. The dealer is reacting to a market that does not wait for you to type. COMEX Rulebook Chapter 112 states, the silver futures trading unit is 5,000 troy ounces, and the minimum price fluctuation is $0.005 per troy ounce for outright transactions. It looks like a tiny increment, but it is a real cost to carry risk at scale, and it compounds fast when flows surge. This is why dealers harden rules before you see spot move. They are defending a hedging process measured in thousands of ounces, not one cart line item. So the checkout becomes a risk aid, not a convenience. Now comes the benchmark that people think proves a single truth, when it really proves multiple clocks. LBMA says the LBMA silver price is set once daily at 12 o'clock in US dollars per troy ounce, and its FASE describes a series of auction rounds lasting 30 seconds. Mini scene. Upstream price formation runs on defined rounds and big blocks, while downstream a buyer watches a retail widget and wonders why the quote moved first. Different systems print different timestamps. The dealer does not have to wait for a daily benchmark or a slow widget. It only has to survive. This is where the mint or refiner enters, because physical reality is what makes the paper reality expensive. LBMA guidance on London. Good. Delivery says a silver bar has a minimum silver content of 750 troy ounces and a maximum of 1100 troy ounces. In human terms, physical supply is standardized, heavy, and slow, so replacement cost and allocation matter more than the product photo. If the wholesaler can only allocate in big bars, retail availability can exist and still be fragile. So the dealer protects itself by changing terms and quotes first. That is the switch choosing survival. Wholesale Coins Direct describes a 1,000 troy ounce silver bar as weighing approximately 71 pounds, which means you pay first. The real product is not just silver, it is shipping, handling, insurance, and time, and all of that is friction the screen hides. When volatility hits, friction becomes risk. Risk becomes tighter rules. And tighter rules become requotes and no quote. This is how the physical world reaches up and grabs the digital cart. APMEX says packages can take on average 1 to 10 business days for delivery. It looks like a purchase is finished at checkout, but execution lives across days where carriers, signatures, and delays exist. That time gap is where the dealer must stay hedged and enforce terms. So the dealer builds the quiet switch, shorten TTL, raise cancellation pain, and require reapproval of updated prices. You do not feel the hedge, but you feel the rules. So here is the warning that people hate until it saves them. A price is only real if it survives payment, confirmation, and shipment without the terms mutating under your cursor. We keep the same 3 checks every time because they are the only ones that do not lie. Is it in stock? Do the terms change? What is the all-in price? If you are buying silver to protect yourself, you cannot let a countdown timer decide your protection for you. I will keep pointing to the quiet switch, because once you see it, you stop paying for ignorance.